So as you discuss how to strengthen UN peacekeepers and give peacekeepers the capabilities they need to operate in today's dangerous environments, I ask you to take time to consider the question from the perspective of women. Hello. Undersecretary General, Foreign and Defense Ministers, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. This is the third UN Defense Peacekeeping Ministerial I have attended, but the first on my home soil. I'm very proud to speak here as an American. I'm a patriot. I love my country, and I want to see it thrive. I also believe in an America that is part of an international community. Countries working together on equal footing is how we reduce the risk of conflict. It is how we avoid the need to send men and women of our militaries to fight and sacrifice overseas. The UN was set up for that purpose, as a way of resolving differences peacefully, supporting each other's prosperity, and extending universal rights and freedoms. It is in all of our interests for the UN to be made effective, brought closer to the lives of citizens, and not ever misused. At a deeper level, a country that believes that all men and women are born free and equal cannot be true to itself if it doesn't defend those principles for all people, wherever they live, regardless their circumstances, and no matter how desperate their struggle. In fact, our support should be strongest where rights are threatened the most. We live at a time of blatant disregard for the laws of war that forbid attacks on civilians. Whether it is missile strikes on schools or hospitals, families bombed in their homes, neighborhoods gassed with chemical weapons, besieged areas deprived of aid, mass rape of women, children, and men. We seem incapable of upholding minimum standards of humanity in many parts of the world. That this comes at a time when humankind is richer and more technologically advanced than ever before is all the more painful. 18 years ago, when I first began working with the UN Refugee Agency, there were just under 20 million displaced people worldwide, and the numbers were falling. Today, there are over 65 million people displaced, and the numbers are rising. More countries are experiencing some form of violent conflict today than any time in the last 30 years. UN peacekeepers now comprise of the second largest group of forces deployed overseas and are often required to serve where there is little or no peace to be kept. Against this backdrop, it is easy to dismiss our institutions as flawed or ineffective. My hope, instead, is that young people, in particular, feel inspired to join the effort to improve them, to join the men and women in the arena, to paraphrase President Roosevelt, who strive and are striving to do deeds and whose faces are marred by dust and sweat and blood. In that regard, I want to express my respect for men and women who serve as peacekeepers, and for those who have been killed and injured. The protection of civilians is the primary responsibility of governments. When UN peacekeepers are deployed, it is usually where a government is unable or unwilling to protect civilian life. Those United Nations missions often represent the last and only hope for millions of people facing daily threats to their safety and their basic rights. The need for peacekeeping troops to have the best possible training and equipment and the highest standards of personal conduct becomes obvious when measured against that weighty responsibility. So that is why this meeting is so important, because it is in the hands of the governments you represent to enable peacekeeping to live up to its ideals and the needs of our time. So as you discuss how to strengthen UN peacekeepers and give peacekeepers the capabilities they need to operate in today's dangerous environments, I ask you to take time to consider the question from the perspective of women. Around the world, there are countless examples of women rising, taking leadership, taking their destiny into their own hands, inspiring us all. But women and girls are still the majority of the victims of war. They are over half of all refugees and the vast majority of the victims of rape and other sexual and gender-based violence. Women are at the absolute epicenter of modern conflict in the worst possible sense. But more often than not, they are still on the outside, looking in when it comes to politics and decisions about their futures. If we went by the principle that those affected by a problem should be in charge of determining the solution, then the majority of the world's peace negotiators, foreign ministers, and diplomats would be women. We all know the reality. In Afghanistan, thousands of women have recently come together in public, risking their lives to ask that their rights and the rights of their children be guaranteed in peace negotiations that so far they have been allowed no part of. Their stand is inspiring, but it should not be necessary. And the international community's silent response is alarming, to say the least. There can be no peace and stability in Afghanistan or anywhere else in the world that involves trading away the rights of women.